Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be taking a look at a Kinks album. I'm going to be reviewing their 1984 album Word of Mouth. So this review was requested by James Griffith, who is a fantastic person here in the VC, makes some great videos. Like, he's quite a big fan of this album. So he asked me to do a review of it, so that's exactly what I'll be doing today, giving a bit of background information about the record, then showing you my vinyl copy, and then looking at each of the album songs in detail. So this was the 21st album released by the Kinks. 21 albums, and they'd only been together about 20 years at this point here, so pretty much consistently putting out music since about 1964. So this was their 21st studio album, released on the 19th of November in 1984. Now, prior to this album coming out, in the early 80s, the Kinks had been experiencing, somewhat of a comeback, a bit of a career renaissance, with, some, hit singles, Come Dancing, was quite a big hit for them, as well as lucrative touring as well, throughout, the early 80s. There were quite a few notable things that happened, around the time they were making this album. Probably the most significant was the departure of drummer Mick Avoy, who had been with the Kinks pretty much since they started. He left the band during the making of this record. He plays drums on I think a couple of tracks, maybe one or two songs on this album. There's a few reasons why he left. Some people say that he simply wanted to retire from music. He'd been 20 years in the Kinks. It'd been quite a hectic 20 years, as to be said. So you can understand him maybe just wanting a rest. However, it's also quite well known, well recorded, that he had a long-standing feud with Dave Davies, who apparently Dave kicked him out off the band. Tensions just got so high between them two that Mick Avoy just left because Dave Davies have always had something against him for some reason. So the guy who replaces Mick Avoy on this record is called Bob Henrit, who does a really good job, I have to say, drumming on this album. I think he's a good, competent drummer. He fits the Kinks sound quite well. More personally, for the band's leader, Ray Davies, he by this point had separated from his rather short-term partner Chrissie Hynde, of course, singer with the Pretenders. But their breakup does something influence some of these albums' lyrics. Unfortunately, though, this record was not as commercially successful as their last few albums. It peaked at number 57 in America, which isn't bad for the Kinks. However, it completely failed to chart in the UK, and got somewhat of a mixed critical reception. So I will just show you the vinyl copy of it here. I must say, I'm not a big fan of the cover, it has to be said. I just don't really like the design of it. It's very 80s album this. You can definitely tell that's the decade when it came out. There's the back of it there, just with the track listing on it. And there's no fancy with this. It's pretty basic. You just get a basic inner sleeve, and this is on Arista label. I believe this was the Kinks' last album on Arista. I think for the next album, Think Visual, they moved to a different record label. Okay, so now I'm going to look at each of the album songs. There are 11 tracks in total, so I will score each song out of 10, and then those scores will be used to give us a overall percentage marking for the album. So we kick off with the song Do It Again, which I really like. I think this is a really great, underrated Kinks song. I would give it a 10 out of 10, to be honest with you. I mean, it's just a really good rocking song. I really like the structure of it as well, the way it starts quite slow, and that it builds the tension up quite well, and then it just picks up so much for the chorus. You've got these power chords going on in it. It's just a great track. Lyrically, it's also really good, just about working to a schedule, mundanity of daily routine. And I absolutely just love this song. It was a semi-successful single for the band, reached number 41 on the US charts, done absolutely nothing in the UK, unfortunately, but I think it is one of the Kinks' stronger songs from around this period. The next one up is called Word of Mouth, which is another loud, mid-tempo rock track, a little bit similar in style to the opener. This one, though, lyrically is also quite interesting. It's about the the spreading of rumours in the tabloid press but like could also be taken like on like a more sort of like personal like level, like sort of like how like gossip like gets around like individuals. I mean, it is quite a good song. It's not a standout track for me, but I think it is a good solid like second track there, word of mouth. And the next one up, I also really like. It's called Good Day, which this is a song where I believe they had trouble recording it with Mick Avoy. He either like just like didn't want a drum like go on like the track, or like maybe like wasn't getting like the right feeling. So in this song, the Kinks use a drum machine, which gives it this very unique like 80s feeling like for like the Kinks. Like even on like their previous like 80s albums, they always kind of stuck to like the usual sounds. Like, whereas I quite like with this track, like they're trying something like a little bit different, like probably out of like necessity, because they didn't have like a drummer like anymore. As for the actual song itself, it's just a really breezy, laid back song full of like optimism. It's basically just saying like it's gonna be like a good day, and like yeah, like that's like the quite a basic like sort of like universal message like of the song. I mean like slightly like repetitive lyrics like on the chorus. And this was also notably the first single from the album, but was a complete flop, like failed to chart pretty much everywhere like it was released, which is a shame, but it isn't for me one of the one of the standout songs like on the album. But a good track there though. Good Day would get an 8 out of 10. Next up is another one of the more popular songs like on the album, and it is one of Dave Davies' contributions. It's Living on a Thin Line, which is definitely one of Dave's more celebrated, like more sort of talked about songs. Supposedly this one lyrically like is about like the infighting like which occurs like in like the band, and like how like their sort of survival like as a group was always uncertain. However, Dave's like also said like it's a comment like on like politicians like of like the time, like what was like going on like politically. I mean, I just like the song. I mean, it's nothing special, like it doesn't quite stand out for me like on the album, but it is another really good solid song. I would give it another 8 out of 10 for Living on a Thin Line. And then we close side one with a rather weaker one of the first sort of weaker tracks like on the album. It's a song called Sold Me Out, which, yes, the first weaker one on the album. It's a kind of generic rock track, this. It's quite fast, quite frantic. It's just not very memorable though. Once again, like I'm trying to sort of like remember like how the song goes like, but it just doesn't really have like a good like melody to it. Lyrically, it's not really like notable either. I would just give it a 6 out of 10. It's nothing bad, it's just nothing particularly great. The next one up is called Massive Reductions, which is a little bit similar like to Sold Me Out. It's another really good solid album track. It's full of these sort of like again power chords, like the Kinks sort of like adapting like to write more like politically biting lyrics, like sort of went in like with like the times. Again, it's a bit fillery, this track here. However, the actual chorus line like where they sing like we're making massive reductions like is actually like quite catchy. So yeah, I would give it a 7 out of 10. Again, not one of the stronger ones on the album. Next song up is called Guilty, which is the second Dave Davies writing contribution to this album, and again musically is very similar to the last track. This album does definitely have a certain sort of sound about it, like this very sort of like sort of like I'd say sort of radio friendly rock sort of sound to it, which is quite ironic because like radio like went nowhere near like this album. But anyway, this song is called Guilty. And it's, yeah, very loud guitars like on it, like sort of like power chords and like also socially like aware lyrics. I would say though vocally Dave he does start to grate a little bit like on like the verses, and like the chorus line like where they sing like you're guilty until you're proven innocent. It just sounds a little bit forced to me. It just doesn't really flow well like as a song. So yeah, we'll give it a 6 out of 10 for Guilty. And next one up is called Too Hot, which has a kind of 50s like rockabilly sort of vibe to it, like but with like an 80s sort of drum sound. Like it's quite a strange mix like of the two. And like lyrically it's quite sort of like observant, like quite like appropriate like for like the time, like about like the 80s obsession like with good looks, like mentioning people like going to the gym like to get fit and that. I mean, like it's another good song. I just don't think it matches like the quality like of like a lot of like the songs like on side one, like which is what I would say like about quite a few like of these songs like on side two.
Waiting for that missing person to call.
But then thankfully the album ends with a run of 3 absolutely wonderful songs. The first of those is called Missing Persons, which is a really, really nice change of pace for the album, which has really been like frantic rockers like all the way. This is just a nice ballad about I would say trying to find like a missing daughter like you that may have like run away from home. It's a very touching song. This like Ray sings it with a lot of emotion. Like I could really like imagine like a lot of parents like sort of like finding this song like quite affecting. Like it's just a really nice, like poetically really nicely written song there. We'll give it a 9 out of 10 for that one. But the next one I think is even better. It's a song called Summer's Gone, which is another real strong track. This one is a bit more upbeat than the last song, with good lyrics. Like, these last few songs I would say are kind of linked by their sort of themes like of like childhood and like that, whereas like all like the other songs like on this album seem to have some sort of like 80s like social commentary like on them, like, whereas these ones like they're kind of going back like to like their childhood with these. This song being about sort of like looking back like over childhood summer holidays. This is a song which James Griffith like included like in his top 5 Kinks songs, and I think it's a very worthy choice. Really underrated song. I think one of the lines which James picked out was like there's like the kids like in like the back of like the car and like they're like driving like the dad like mad or something like that. I mean, it's just really again nicely written, like expertly sort of like put together, like in the way which like Ray Davies like does like so great. So yeah, really good song. Also notably the 3rd single from the album, and once again it done absolutely nothing chart wise. So yeah, but that's Summer's Gone, really good song, a 10 out of 10 for me. Now the next song closest to the album, and it's called Going Solo, which is another song which James included like in his top 5 Kinks songs, and I must say that this one and like Summer's Gone are to real hidden gems of the Ray Davies songbook. This is again another track about like sort of like children like but like in this case sung back from the perspective like of like a parent, like about like whose children like are like in like the process like of like leaving home. And like this song basically just describes like how like a parent like would feel like in like that situation, like the kids are now sort of teenagers like ready like to move on, and that it's just a really great pop arrangement. I think this one could have had legs like as a single, like, but as it is I think it works really well like as just like an album track. Really underrated song there. Another 10 out of 10 for me.
Didn't say she didn't ask, she just went.
So yeah, as you can see, this album does have its peaks and troughs. Like overall, it averages out at 81%. So yeah, I think that is a very worthy score for it. This is definitely, for me, one of the Kinks' stronger albums. I just think that lyrically, like Ray Davies, like is on point, like especially like on like the last 3 songs, like but like as well as like Do It Again is brilliant. Too Hot's pretty good. What other ones I like? Word of Mouth is like a good song like as well. However, there are just a few ones like especially like on at the start of side 2, like which do let this album down like a little bit. It definitely gets into like a very sort of like 80s sort of like rock sort of sound to it, like quite generic, slightly generic sound to it. Like whoever I think like when this album really shines like is when the songwriting like is up to standard, like which it definitely is like on quite a handful like of these songs. I'd say his writing like is a lot more melodic and more memorable than on previous albums, and like I say, arguably this could be considered like the last really good Kinks album. So yeah, that's been my review off Word of Mouth 1984 from the Kinks. So yes, I hope you have enjoyed this review, and I will see you all next time for the next one. Goodbye.